Hello and welcome to It's a Frankly Harry podcast, this edition of it anyway. I'm your host, Frank Weber. I'm so glad that you could join me in the forest one more time. I have a great show for you today, talking about a lot of things, some personal stories and some opinions as well. I just got back from my Aunt Joyce's funeral down in South Texas, east and southeast of San Antonio is where the folks live. A lot of relatives down there. My dad's side is from there. She passed away from a brain cancer that was different than the brain cancer my dad passed away from 11 years ago. So totally different types of cancer there. But the funeral was very lovely. Great memorial to her, and we love her, and she'll be missed. Just had a few observations down there. I always have to be looking around and observing things, commenting on things. Well, first of all, it was really great to be with family and catching up with them, and a lot of things have changed down there. I don't know if it's because I'm older and wiser, and I realize a little bit more about a lot of stuff now, and it's just people like you and me. We're broken and trying to do the best we can in this life, and just a lot of good people, a lot of reasonable people, and it was great visiting with them, and hopefully we'll get together again, hopefully under happier circumstances, but really enjoyed the time being there. I did observe, I know my brother went to Texas A&M and I went to Texas Tech. We did observe down there something kind of unusual, though. There sure seem to be a lot of Texas fans there nowadays. I know it's in Texas and all that stuff, but when we were growing up, it seemed to lean toward A&M, and I don't exactly know why the shift. I know for a number of years, when I was in grade school and high school, A&M probably had the better consistent team, but it was the agricultural school, even though it's not the only agricultural school in Texas by far. I mean, we have Tech and WT here in my backyard who teach agriculture, so I don't entirely understand the change. My brother thinks a lot of it is T-shirt fans and people following a winner type stuff, which has been going on for quite a while now. But anyway, Texas lost its playoff game Friday night to Ohio State, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I know some of you listening may be fans of the Burnt Orange there, but congratulations on a good season. Anyway, but I'm digressing too much there. During the funeral service, I got to thinking, a lot of people talk about loved ones smiling down on us from heaven. I think some of them have to be laughing at us, actually. I'm not saying Aunt Joyce or my dad or grandma are doing this necessarily, but I think some of them have to be laughing at us because they're in this great place of bliss and rest, at a paradise, if you will, and we're down here still dealing with a lot of the things that we're called to deal with at this particular point in time. And I don't know, maybe one day we'll be up there laughing as well. I mean, I'm sure we will. So anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. It wasn't until Friday when they had the services. I had to leave on Wednesday to beat the weather, and had to drive here to beat the high airfares and avoid that. It was a long ways. I had to go a little out of the way to pick up my wife and then take her back to where she works. It was it's like 500 miles there and 500 miles back, but then the alternative route that we took wound up being a round trip of about 1,400 miles, and that gets really long and complicated, if you know what I mean, but we avoided the weather for the most part, except for some rain on Thursday, so we're doing fine. We made it fine. Everything was safe. Nothing really treacherous. Oh, and there's a number of Buc-ee's along the way. Finally got to go to the one in Amarillo on my way out. And it wasn't too busy. That was usually one of my complaints, is that they're just so busy and a lot of traffic and everything. People really love those places. They are really good. They've certainly tapped into a market without a doubt. But those are still springing up all over the place. We've had ours in Amarillo for 4 weeks now already. My goodness, time sure is flying by. Speaking of funerals, I wanted to give a quick mention of Jimmy Carter's passing. He passed away about 2 weeks ago, I think. And they just had the national funeral or memorial at the National Cathedral on Thursday. This was the day before my Aunt Joyce's funeral. Certainly just want to give my thoughts and prayers to him and his family. Wasn't a great president. I know historically, I think that's what most citizens would tell you, kind of in over his head, but very respectable, admirable guy, because he had a very Christ-like servant's heart, and was very down to earth and always pursuing the Lord. So have to have some admiration for him. I do anyway. And he was president actually when I was born. He was in his first year in office actually, back when that happened. So I watched a little bit of his funeral there at the National Cathedral, and I had to give a couple of observations there, because it was always interesting when you get a bunch of politicians together in a church. I mean, there's got to be a lot of jokes there, if you think about it. I know Trump and Obama were yucking it up and laughing about something there, and a lot of the footage on that is going viral. Somebody has even made some kind of, I'm not familiar with all the terminology, some sort of meme thing where they were probably making up the words of what they were actually saying, and I don't know if they were making fun of Kamala Harris or something like that. It was pretty funny. What I noticed, though, is that there were a lot of people in the audience who were very old and were falling asleep. And there was some lady across the aisle who not only had her eyes closed, but she was definitely nodded down during the service. I don't know who that was. I have no idea who that was, actually. I think I saw Laura Bush napping a little bit. I think a lot of them were very tired, or maybe just old. I don't know what the heck was going on. Surprised, though, that President Biden got up there and delivered a speech, and he was very energetic and coherent, which he is sometimes. I have to give him some credit for that. But I managed to watch a little of that Thursday morning before we continued on our journey, and I just had to say something about that. I just something about putting politicians and all these leaders and stuff in church, and kind of wonder if that's really a great place for them sometimes, some of the things that they seem to do and say and all that. So long, President Carter. The main thing I wanted to talk about today is a concept that I've been thinking about for the last few weeks. I think I talked about it on at least one of the shows, maybe the Christmas Day show. I don't even really go back and remember my old shows. Maybe the New Year's Day show, because I technically try to make this a resolution, but I don't know if it's going to be all done this year. Maybe it will be. We'll have to see, but I wanted to talk about simplicity in life a little bit. I want to make my life simpler and a lot less complicated than it seems to be right now. I just think that that's the right way to go. my model for that is Jesus, and he lived a simple life and showed us how to live a simple faith, and not something that was simple in a bad way, or not necessarily a bad way, but kind of with connotations, like it's not being a simpleton like Nathan Johnson and the Jerk, but to simplify things, make them easier, less complicated. I know I talked about this at Christmas, because Christmas is supposed to be a very joyous holiday, but it's supposed to be fairly simple, and then we made it real complicated with Christmas parties and decorations everywhere, and tons of food and candy and presents and stuff like that. And all those are fine, but I mean, can we scale it back a lot, make it simpler, make things, understand things as being fairly simple for that time of year, and really every time of year. The other thing that I was thinking about, though, there's a lot of things that annoy me and aggravate me, and I always have to ask myself, is it because this thing is not simple? Is it because it's too complicated? I think complicated things are a big pet peeve of mine. Kind of like driving. Some of my soapboxes on driving, it's really a pretty simple deal. You want to get from one place to another. Let's not complicate things and make things dangerous and aggravate other drivers. Let's just keep it simple. Anyway, one of the things that brought this about, this topic, and I was thinking about this the other day, again, more hearts and prayers go out to the folks in Pacific Palisades in the LA area. Malibu, I think, was another area. Pasadena. I think it's crazy. I think it's like in Brentwood now, too. All these folks' houses burning down, and they're losing their homes and their memories, and a few people are getting killed. All of that stuff is preventable, and preventable in a simple way, but the politicians out there are not understanding that. They're not doing that. The old Smokey the Bear commercial about only you can prevent forest fires. It's true, but not always in the way that you might think. I mean, obviously, throwing lit cigarette butts out the window is not a good idea. You can start forest fires. You can start grass fires, which we have a lot of here in the Texas Panhandle. Sometimes we have a lot of them. I think it was last year we had that really big one, or was that the year before? I don't really remember now, but there's also something on a global scale. I took a class at Tech 25 years ago or 26 years ago, whatever that was, called ecology. Now, ecology is it's related to environmentalism, but the environmentalists don't necessarily follow all of its demands and requirements. Something that floored me in that class is that if you don't take care of the underbrush in forests, you don't clean it out, or you don't do controlled burns, and there's no water around as well, things stay very, very dry. There's eventually going to be a fire, and it's not necessarily going to be set off by humans. It could be set off by Mother Nature or God. But anyway, nature has a way of cleaning itself up, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the way the fire started out there. I know there's a lot of other complications to it. But simple forest and water management would have prevented all that stuff, and people wouldn't have lost their homes and memories. But the problem out there, though, is that the people, this is the people that they're voting for. They don't necessarily take heed to the way life and nature really works. And it's very sad, hear a lot of crazy stories about whether these people are really going to be able to rebuild or not. Insurance is already completely denying them. What the hell are they paying for? in insurance. And then, of course, I haven't listened to his show today on Monday the 13th, but Adam has said that regulations and the red tape and the Coastal Commission, it's going to take a while for them, for sure, to rebuild because of all that. And then there's a question about whether they rebuild at all. But then there's a story this morning as well of the governor out there supposedly suspending the regulations so they can rebuild. Maybe he's actually reading the political winds, if you will. But anyway, what I'm saying is simple knowledge like that, simple means, maintenance, can prevent all these disasters. And then you look at simplicity in other areas of our life. I wrote down a number of stories here. One of the things that bugs me, I'm a dentist, of course. I'm in dentistry. I think the profession has gotten too complicated. I think possibly because of corporatization, maybe because of the insurance. But people are, while they're collegial, they're very competitive as well. Non-compete clauses. There's a legal reasoning for that, and there's a possibility that there's something that's possible that non-compete clauses try to prevent, but then I tend to think that those clauses are also pretty mean-spirited, and I don't know why people put them in there, because they're worried about people opening up next door after an employee leaves, but that's very unlikely to happen, and they make you sign those things before you even start work there, and it's kind of nonsense. That's why I'm trying to move on. But that makes things a lot more complicated, and then that's before you even get into dealing with patients who a lot of times don't understand what you're trying to do and how difficult the work is a lot of times. I think this is true a lot of times in faith and religion. I think, like I said before, Jesus and the Christian way is actually a very simple way, very simple faith. But there's a lot of tradition and ritual that's not so simple, and I wonder if that keeps people away. Lifestyles, I talked before here about naturism. I mean, you can't go necessarily, naked in society everywhere, but there is a time and place for that, and it's very healthy, and it's a very simple way of life that's so good for you and for the environment. But it's like humanity wants something more complicated in that and in a lot of other ways. True in sports. I've already complained about the college football playoff. The NFL playoffs have started. Those used to be a lot simpler with a lot fewer teams, in fact. But I think it's pretty complicated. Their contracts and free agency sound really complicated as well. Doing this podcast sometimes, I wonder if the way I'm doing it right now is a very simple way, just to be on microphone and speak to you, and don't really need a lot of equipment, don't really even need to do a lot of editing for a relatively short show like this. But people out there in business and the world in so many ways, always say, well, you need to change or die and incorporate video and edit these things to the hilt, and then do text memes on social media and all that. And I may get there someday. It's taking a little while, but I said certainly I might do video with interviews. But anyway, I'm just saying, let's try to keep things simple. I had a professor in dental school, oral surgery professor. He was the head honcho at the time, Dr. Alexander, and this is a principle that he wasn't the only one who preached this. A lot of other people have talked about the KISS principle, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I get that now. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think people are happier and less stressed if we can just keep things simple, live like a simple life, and not have to worry so much about money and the material concerns of the world, that sort of thing. But that's kind of my soapbox for now. And it's something that I will definitely revisit, I think, as time goes on. The simple life. And I think the simple life is the happier life. And anyway, I think that's about all that I have for now. I am going to tell you real quick, this show will air on, or drop. I like to use the word air like I'm in radio, because this is a lot like radio, isn't it? But this show will drop on Wednesday, the 15th of January. I'm starting school again at Texas Tech. It's an online program, certified financial planning, and which is a master's degree, as well as master's in business administration. Have a lot of thoughts and ideas about where I want to go with those, but it's kind of a new beginning for me. It'll probably take a couple of years to get through everything, but just want to ask you to keep me in your thoughts and prayers on that, and I look forward to starting it. Pretty excited about it. It should be really interesting. I'm only taking 9 hours this semester, which is barely full-time at the master's level. I think it'll be interesting, but there's also a temptation to think that it's going to be somewhat easier, because I've already been through the ringer and hell in dental school years ago, where we were taking something like, I think the equivalent was something like 30 hours a semester, and almost all of us made it through, but 9 hours online. I may take some more later if it's too light or I get kind of bored, but that's a good starting place. I hope it won't be too easy, is what I'm saying, but it should be pretty interesting. So anyway, thank you for being with me once again today. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your family and friends, anybody you run into, about It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. And I will look forward to visiting with you again next week. And every week after that, we're going to keep this thing going. Still working on tweaking things a little bit. So anyway, until next time, this is your host, Frank Weber from The Forest, saying I love you and thank you for being here. We'll talk again next week. Bye.